Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Cuz You Don't Know Football. We back at you for week two of the revisited draft of the 2022 draft. We got Mooch coming back on here. Don't worry, we're gonna get back to the bottom of this. You know, I just I can't wait to get to this because this is now something he didn't want to admit it. Mooch, oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I was. If you heard me, then I was talking a whole lot of stuff real quick. I was just telling everybody that this is like your new favorite topic now. Like I think this is your thing now. You see what I'm saying? Like if there's anything that you love more than this, it's my nephews and my sister-in-law. That's it. You see what I'm saying? Now you understand where I'm at.
Are you talking about the draft? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the topic of the revisited draft from 3 years ago. Look, see, look, it did that. Look, and it does it to you too. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't just me. How you doing, bro?
I'm hanging in. How are you?
Pretty much doing the same thing, figuring out this whole life thing day by day. All right,
Heard that.
so let's jump right on into it. Of course, we're going in alphabetical order. Did you want to tell people your scale again, just to make sure that they knew again what the numbers mean to you?
Yeah, I basically just looked at everybody's all the teams' draft grades and split up my grade for them based on a 1, 2, 3, 4 scale. One being a very, very good scale draft, maybe even an elite level draft. Two being a good draft. Three being not so good, and four being a terrible draft.
Okay, cool. So let's start with, of course, we're going in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens. Their first pick in the 2022 draft was Kyle Hamilton. Then they also got Tyler Lindenbaum as their center. In the second round, they got David Abajo or
A Jabo.
Ajabo. Sorry, once again, these names is outrageous for me. Okay, I'm gonna do the best I can. Just work with me. Uh, and third round, they got Travis Jones. And later on in the draft, this is actually where they got Isaiah Likely too. So, what grade are you giving this draft?
I gave this a 2, um, almost a 1, but so Kyle Hamilton is probably the best safety in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Linderbaum is one of the best centers in the league. David Ojabo, they took a chance on him because he would have been like a top 5, top 10 level pick, but I believe he tore his Achilles while he was in college, or maybe even in the workouts leading up to the combine. So that one hasn't worked out quite well, very well. I think he's been sort of on and off the field after taking off the first year because he was injured. But Travis Jones I believe, is a starter for them at tackle, a defensive tackle. And then, like you said, Isaiah Likely. That's he's probably going to be. I know they run 2 tight ends, but he's for most teams he's a starting tight end. He's behind Mark Andrews right now in Baltimore. So I gave it a 2. It could easily be a 1. It's a very good draft. Baltimore traditionally drafts very well. Doesn't necessarily draft for need ever. Sometimes they do, but they're basically great players just fall to them in there wherever they're picking. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a good draft.
Yeah, listen, I am very big on this draft. I think the Bengals, the Ravens. To me, I think they killed this draft. I mean, you got pretty much two difference makers and a solid starter. You know what I mean? So right now that team is loaded with talent. Their difference makers are not really all getting paid right now, so that's a good thing. Now, the two things that I thought the Ravens sh- that they didn't do well in terms of their draft process was, I think they should spend more picks on wide receiver. I think they're in a interesting situation because of that, and also pass rushers. And I think those two positions have held them back the most, not being able to spread the field like that would help Lamar. I think catches up with them eventually in the playoffs, and having guys that they can just go get the quarterback with four, because they always are like of the top five pass rush teams. But when it's all said and done, a team in the playoffs always figures out, okay, they can't just come get me with four pass rush or with two pass rushers. So that was the one gap in their draft strategy, but at their team, they're good everywhere. They're better at certain positions, and that usually comes out of their draft regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting at wide receiver because they have tried in the draft to draft wide receivers. Just not many have panned out as being good. Part of the problem for them is they're usually a good team, so they draft in the 20s almost every year. And this year they drafted Kyle Hamilton in the first round and pick 14, which is higher than they normally do. But to pass up Kyle Hamilton, to pass on Kyle Hamilton for a receiver might have been a mistake, given that he's probably the best safety in the league. So, I understand. I agree that they don't really have the quality of elite receiver. It's just it is oftentimes it doesn't fall to them in that way.
Right, and that's why I love Baltimore, and I love their draft strategy and stuff like that because they'll take the best safety and be like, well, he's going to work out. You know what I mean? However that means in terms of what positions are more important or whatever, however you feel. Like this player is going to fill a need and he's going to be special at that place. I would rather have that than Niles, and that's why I think they are Baltimore always perennial contenders.
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on. The crazy thing about the AFC, we probably should have did this out of order because most of like the interesting teams are in the beginning. But we gonna get through this whole thing regardless. Buffalo next. um, in 2022, they spent their first round pick on Elam, or Kyer Elam. Then in the second round, they got James Cook. In the third round, they got Terrell Bernard. And then later on in the draft, they got Shakir. Um, yeah. So, what do you feel about the Buffalo Bills 2022 NFL draft?
I gave this a two, a solid two. It's a good draft. Kyer Elam is no longer on the team. He's not sure. I think he might be in Houston. I'm not sure, but he's not on the team anymore. He didn't pan out for them. He was not. He did not fulfill the potential that they thought they had in him. But in the second round, they got James Cook. He's their starting running back. He might be about to hold out for a new contract. But he's definitely produced as their starting running back over the last couple of years. Getting Khalil Shakir and where they did is pretty much a steal based on what his production has been in the NFL. And also Christian Benford is their starting cornerback. So while
right.
they swung and missed on Kyer Elam, but they did get their starting cornerback in Christian Benford later in the draft. So I gave it a two. Most of the picks worked out for them. Just Kyer Elam did not.
Mm-hmm. So, I think on the last on the last episode we were talking about, I forget which team it was, but we were talking about wide receiver. It was Green Bay, and that I admit I said that their wide receivers were actually good. That they picked, but then you're like, what they went and picked another one. I think Baltimore is in that same scenario when it comes to corner. Yeah, they swung and missed with Kyer
You mean
Elam.
Buffalo?
Buffalo, yes, thank you. Buffalo is in that same situation when it comes to cornerback. They swung and missed with Kyer Elam, but you know what I mean, getting Christian Benford as their starting cornerback. I think they're still next year, or I think they're still in the process of getting cornerbacks to replace what they want and get the cornerback that they want to be there, and that's gonna be fine. But for me, James Cook, man, listen, James Cook changed the trajectory of their whole offensive strategy. He took them from a pass happy, more predictable Josh Allen has to be Superman situation to no, we can actually hand the ball off to James Cook and we can run a whole offense. And I think that even made Josh Allen scarier than having all of those wide receivers because it just made it too easy for him. You know what I mean? He definitely, of course, Josh Allen got better over the years. I'm not saying when in like his rookie or his sophomore year that would have been the case. Like he would have been able to take that like that. But now in his career, developed as he is, the passer that he is, having James Cook definitely transcended that. I want to say that they should pay him. I'm still a guy though who feels like I would rather have two backs than one star top of the league running paid running back. But I think they're gonna have to wrap him up. But I think they still should be focusing in on complementary backs too.
I can see that.
But also Buffalo, another team. Oh, and I wanted to say this too. Just like Baltimore, I have the same note on Buffalo that I have with Baltimore. the pass rushers. I mean, they just it's just that they couldn't get to teams with two defensive ends or two pass rushers, two predominant pass rushers. That I think held them back too, you know. So I think they're a team that should draft more pass rushers. I don't know if that comes in defensive end or outside linebacker, but more pass rushers because they're good at it, but they don't have difference makers there. And I think that's a position of you need difference makers in this league.
Yep, and they also could use better receivers as well. They suffer from the same issue, at least from a draft perspective, that Baltimore does, which is they usually draft towards the end of the first round. So there's not, you got to really know who the receivers are, and really not get lucky, but just you you have to draft well if you're going to draft a receiver at the end of the first round who's going to be a difference maker, and
Right.
they just haven't done that yet.
And me and you actually had a conversation actually in your living room about would you give up a whole like a whole bunch of draft picks for a pass rusher, an elite pass rusher. We knew we would. We both agreed that with a quarterback, you absolutely would. But with a pass rusher, I'm in the thought process. Baltimore, Buffalo. If like next year, if there's an elite pass rusher, I don't know yet. If there is, you might want to consider giving up the most of your draft to going and getting that person. That's my thought.
Yeah, it says that's always a consideration. They are good enough in the rest of their roster that they can afford to, at least in theory,
Mm-hmm.
versus some other teams that who are like picking top 12, trading up to number 3 or number 2 or number 1.
Mm-hmm.
They probably don't have the team to do that, to support that.
Right. Okay. Cool. So we're going to move on to Cincinnati. We're on to Cincinnati. You know what Bill Belichick said? We're on to Cincinnati.
On to Cincinnati.
He's, I don't know if you've been keeping up with him lately, but he's interesting now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll keep it PG. He's having fun.
Oh boy. All right, cool. So Cincinnati 2022, their first round pick, they picked Daxon Hill, safety. In their second round, they picked Cam Taylor Britt, also another safety. In the third round, they got Zachary Carter, defensive tackle. Did they get anybody? And then in the fourth round, they got Cordell Volson, offensive tackle. So, what did you think about this draft?
I gave it a 3. Daxton Hill and Cam Taylor Britt are both on the team, but neither are like really good. Daxton Hill was a reach in the moment. Like when they drafted him, there was some question as to whether they drafted him too high, and that has tended to be demonstrated with his on-field play in the NFL. I think he's going to start this year, but he's not. He's going to be their corner. I think they're moving him from safety to corner, where he's been playing better. So, it's not a terrible draft, but it's a small draft. They only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks. Not that bad actually. But to definitely no one who you're thinking is going to be a Pro Bowler or an All Pro player in the next couple of years.
So, this draft was interesting. I really didn't like their draft. One, not having a whole bunch of picks, but going safety in today's NFL. I know this is a little controversial because of what I just said about Kyle Hamilton and them picking that player. Neither one of them was Kyle Hamilton. So going safety, um, it's not the biggest position of need in the NFL. Like you can get by with pretty average to good safeties in this league. So basically saying, okay, we're gonna solidify our safety. Like you can have a solidified safety position and it not really make a difference in terms of what you're able to do. And I think that defense I think is going to be real bad this year. And
Hard to be worse than it was last year. I mean, I guess
yes,
if
yes,
if he sits out, then that would definitely make it worse. But they
yeah.
were pretty bad last year.
And I'm thinking they're probably going to try to. I think they're going to try to get a move to trade him. There are some teams that could use Trey Hendrickson this year that I think could. Like two teams that I heard the Commanders and then the Bears were two teams that I heard were doing, and they were both could use him. So I think they might do something with that too. So
I mean, I would bet that the vast majority of the NFL could use him. I mean, let's be clear, Cincinnati could use him. They definitely could. Yeah, he's a good player. He's a little bit older, but for a team that thinks that they're a contender, he'd be good for them. Trade a third round pick for him. I think that might suffice. You have to extend him when you trade for him. So that's the other part of it. But with Daxton Hill and Cam Taylor, but like I don't think they thought they were drafting safety. I think they thought that they were getting a cornerback and a safety, and they just haven't. And neither player has really solidified themselves in either position. They've been kind of like trying them out in both spots. And again, it's just an example of how those players have not really panned out, even though they're still on the roster.
Okay, cool. So let's go over to Cleveland. So they did not have a first or second round pick in 2022. I wonder who they got with that pick. I mean, with those picks.
So these were the picks that went for the quarterback.
Oh,
It's
Deshaun
nasty.
Watson.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
Okay, so in third round they got Martin Emerson. Third round they got Alex Wright, defensive end. And then in third round they got David Bell, wide receiver. In the fifth round they did get Jerome Ford, the running back. And you know what? I'm gonna just be quick. I'm gonna just say this one. That this was crap, especially after saying what they got with Deshaun Watson and everything. Yeah, this you could just crumple this one up for me and just throw this one away. But this is a Cleveland Browns draft. I'm not. Are we sure? Are we certain that if they would have had a first or second round pick that we'd be saying anything different about their draft? They had a couple
I
years,
mean,
but I think they're the Cleveland Browns, and I think they make Cleveland Brown decisions. And I think even in this draft, I'm like, these are some very Cleveland Brown decisions that you're making.
this was a bad draft. I gave this a 4. The only player of note, really, I think. Well, Martin Emerson, is he still on the roster? I know at one point
I'll tell you in 1 second.
he was sort of like the second or third corner on the team, depending on injury and stuff like that. He may have entered last season as a starting number 2 corner. And Jerome Ford,
Yes,
he's a
he is
serviceable
their
running back.
cornerback. He is starting Martin
Okay.
Emerson.
Okay. All right. So maybe I give it a 3. I'll say a 3 because they do at least have a third round pick that turned into a starter for them. Jerome Ford is a serviceable running back, but I for some reason I probably know him more because of like fantasy football than anything else. He's somebody who on your fantasy team you can slot in if you players are on buys or injuries elsewhere. But he's not much more than a serviceable running back in real football. So I'll give it a 3 because Martin Emerson actually does start.
Okay. 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 And Jerome Ford is slotted as their backup running back right now, just to let you know. I don't know
Who's
how.
supposed to start for them?
Um
Nick Chubb is
Quinshon
gone.
Judkins, they just drafted a running back in this year.
So they're gonna start the rookie. Okay, well then yeah.
That's right
I'll
now.
still
We'll see how camp goes on. I'm just saying right now they have him
right,
slotted as the backup.
right.
All right. Then we're gonna go over to the Denver Broncos. Um, so they also didn't have a first round pick this year either. But in the second round they got Nick Bonito, their pass rusher. In the third round they got they got Greg, their tight end. I'm not even gonna try.
Dolchich.
Is it
Dolchich.
Dulcich? Because it was that seed
Dolchich.
that was a seed that was interesting in there. I'm not
Yeah,
even
Dolchich.
Dulcich. Okay, they got Greg Dulcich, tight end. In the fourth round they got Damari Mathis, and they got Ioma. I'm gonna get this one. Wars. Nope. Ioma U, defensive end. Did they have any late round picks that were no? All right. So what do you think
Nah.
about this draft?
So I gave it a 3 because basically Nick Benito is the only one who has turned into something. Now Nick Benito is a really good
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pass rush only defensive end edge type player. Um, and in that role, like I said, he's really good at that. That was a good pick. But other than that, I don't see anything of note in their draft. So I gave it a 3.
I was just trying to see real quick if any other of them are starting right now. The tight end possibly. No, no. Okay, yeah, but they did get Nick Benito in this draft, and they did. I was looking actually online, came across my feed like the teams, like the pass rush tandems that were leading the league in sacks, and then like Nick Benito. they have like three defensive ends that they circle in and out, and between them
Mhm.
three, Nick Bonito in one and Nick Bonito in another one is like one is like they're like number one in the league and then like number three in the league. So Nick
Right.
Bonito has been like they really crushed it getting Nick Bonito. Uh,
Yeah.
I would love to have a pass rush specialist like that. I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of people like their defensive ends to be able to stop the run too, and I totally understand it. But to have that, I just think that's
Well, especially if he's rotating in, you can if you have other body types at defensive end on your roster, you
mhm,
can who are good at that, who are good at
mhm.
that sort of that kind of combo pass rush, stop the run roll. You can have a pass rush only defensive end and sort of take that on your roster.
Mhm. But yeah, but the rest of these picks, I don't even know if any of them are really still on the roster. To be real with
Yeah, some of these drafts you can tell like why you look at that draft and then you fast forward, you know why there's the head coach at that time is no longer the head coach of the team.
you. Hmm.
And like it's just and how like even Denver had a really good season for them for what their expectations were last year,
Hmm.
but there
Hmm.
were a lot of holes in their roster. And you could tell like
Hmm.
you miss on a draft like this 3 years later, it really starts to hurt because you don't have that inexpensive talent on your roster and you're trying to replace it with more expensive veteran talent to just fill holes.
Is that a take that the Denver Broncos are going to take a step back in 2025?
No, actually, I mean, I haven't looked at the
Okay,
2024, I mean,
I was just
2023
curious. I
draft.
just wanted breaking news. You see what I'm saying?
No, I haven't really thought about what they're going to look like this year, this upcoming season. I haven't really looked at what their schedule is and all that. But you can tell, like looking at them in the playoffs last year and how while they got there, and that's a good thing, they kind of didn't belong.
Hmm.
You can tell a draft like this helps in that sort of perspective.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we are going to move on to the Houston Texans. Moving along. So with their first pick in 2022, they got Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback. Uh, then they had two first round picks. Then they got Kenyon Green, the offensive guard. Then in the second round they got Jalen Petrie, safety. Um, then they got John Mechie the third, wide receiver. And they got Redamian Pierce, the running back. They got that. They got him in this draft as well. So what do you think about this draft?
Yeah, I gave it a 2. It's kind of all over the place. So Derek Stingley obviously has come through. He
Knocked that
started
out
off
the
kind of
park.
slow, but he's definitely come through. He's earned that number 3 overall pick. Sort of everything that comes with that. He's earned that and more. Kenyon Green is no longer on the team. And he did not perform well while he was there. He just didn't, it never really clicked for him. But Jalen Petrie is very good at sort of like a slot safety, like a big slot kind of
Right.
defender. He's really good at that. He's sort of like I like the way he plays. He has an aggression to him in his play style. That's good. But John Michie hasn't. Now John Michie entered the league. They drafted him. I think after the draft, it was discovered that he had has cancer.
Hmm.
I think he's in remission right now, which is a very good thing. But I don't think that he's done much on the field. Christian Harris was supposed to be kind of like a draft steal. I remember he had a big reputation coming out of Alabama at linebacker. He hasn't really done much. But then, Damian Pierce was even more than serviceable at running back. So I gave it a 2, but sort of like a volatile 2 because the draft is kind of successes and failures all over the place.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I think the next two drafts they were the drafts for them that there was like, okay, that's why they're kind of in the upper echelon of teams. We could kind of say that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, getting a the pick of Derek Stingley Jr. for me kind of was. I'm not saying. Let me just say this. Let me back up. I talk fast and I talk before I think. Cornerback position has become more of a position of need as opposed to what I thought before. I felt like a lot of teams were getting away with not having superior cornerback play and it not really stopping them from stuff. Whereas this draft really, or it might even been the draft before this, where I kind of started to say, all right, cornerback, you need upper echelon cornerbacks to really succeed. So So I think they crushed that pick. Derek Stingley Jr. Yeah, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Um, but yeah, yes, they definitely had some hits and misses. The point that I really want to make about the depth on their team and having good players everywhere and then standing out at certain positions, kind of still in the future with future picks or future drafts from what we're talking about right now. But
Mhm.
yeah, this was a really good place note to say this is kind of where you could see things turning and the reputation turning.
Yep.
All right. Now we on the great teams, you see. Now we talking about something here. The Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah. All right.
Yo, you ain't got to be like that, okay? You don't have to be like that. All right. So we did not have a first round pick in this draft.
Why
Um,
didn't you have a first round pick in this draft?
I don't know who we got. I don't know who do. Oh,
You traded for Carson Wentz.
oh, this is that. Oh no. Oh.
Can I add that? Can I add that to this? Can I include that in my analysis of this
Yes,
draft?
yes, you can. Yes, you can. That is
Oh
a fair
man,
assessment. And for everybody who doesn't know, like I was very excited to get Carson Wentz when we traded
you
for him.
was
I
so
was
excited. I
very
was like,
excited. I said,
I have no idea
"Oh,
why you're
we got
excited
you."
to get
And
Carson Wentz.
oh my God, was that
Eagles
cool?
Eagles couldn't like they drove him to the airport. Couldn't
Listen,
wait to get him out
listen.
of Philly.
This might be why Howie Roseman. This is like, oh, this is how you GM. Howie Roseman probably said from this pick right here, this is how you GM because damn, did we get fleeced in this draft? God
Gave up
damn.
a first.
You're right.
Give him a
Yes.
first and
Okay.
a third that turned into a second because y'all played him most of the season.
And he threw for like, and he had, and for the year before that, he threw for more games where he threw for less than 100 yards. Then he threw for over 275 yards. I'll repeat, he threw for more games where he threw for 75 yards or less than throwing for 275 yards or more. So, yeah, okay. Yes, you can add that to this too. Um,
Yeah.
so we had no first round pick. And in the second round, we picked out.
Now Carson Wentz was your first round pick. That's what we're going to say.
I'm not saying that. Carson Wentz was your first round pick.
Yeah, he was good for us.
uh,
No, he
we
wasn't.
all right. In the second round, we got Alec Pierce, a wide receiver, and in the third round, we picked Jelani Woods, tight end, and then also in the third round, we picked Bernard Ryman, offensive tackle. Then we got Nick Cross, safety. Um, Andrew Ogletree actually was in this draft. Okay, I know who that is. And then Rodney Thomas, the third, or Rodney Thomas, we drafted him as a safety as well. So, what are you giving this draft? And you can caveat that without Carson Wentz and with Carson Wentz as well. Okay.
I'll leave Carson Wentz out because we all have a general agreement and understanding of who he is as a player.
Mm-hmm.
I still gave this a 3, and it could have been a 4. I do. Nick Cross is a quality starting safety for the Colts. Alec Pierce, nah, I don't see it with him. He's like, he just ain't it. And I think he's going to be basically replaced this season anyway. So after this year, he may not be on the roster anymore. Jelani Woods never really panned out. It's more of a project, more of an idea than an actual player on the field. So I gave this a 3 on the strength of finding Nick Cross to be at pick 96 and being a good starting safety.
So this has been a typical Colts draft over the last couple years. So
Bad.
first, no, it's not bad. See, it's not bad. So first of all, Alec Pierce is the one thing that made our quarterback look halfway decent this past year, to be honest with you, because he's like, I can't throw any intermediate to check down routes. I have to go deep. Alec, I'm being honest with you. The if you look at all the highlights that were like, oh, these were good passes, Alec Pierce was on the other end of that. So Alec Pierce is going to be there. Jelani Woods has been hurt. I have no idea what Jelani Woods is. I haven't seen him for one play. I have no idea what he is. But
He
we
was
get
he was
depth.
he's like a big, fast athlete, but
Yes,
just that like
yes.
the football part just never really came through.
Yeah, it's not even that it never came through. I have no idea what it is because he's been hurt. You know what I mean? He hasn't played.
Mm.
So, but what I'm saying is there's depth. So Alec Pierce provided depth to the wide receiver core. Our wide receiver core is pretty deep, actually. Jelani Woods, if he's, I don't know what he is, but he's definitely gonna be our number two tight end if he stays healthy. We'll see what it is, but it doesn't seem as though we're going to be making many moves outside of that. Bernard Ryman is our starting offensive tackle. Nick Cross, yes, he had his best year last year. So before that, he actually was like, but he definitely had his best year last year. Alec Ogletree, they're at least keeping on as a tight end, so he's going to probably be like the third tight end. And Rodney Thomas the third, or Rodney Thomas the second, excuse me, is a rotational tight end. So it's like we've been adding a lot of depth
He's a
in.
defensive back,
Well, he's a safety.
Ronnie Thomas.
He's a safety. He's a
Okay.
safety.
Oh,
He's
you
not
said
going.
tight end. Okay, I got it. Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. We've been providing great depth in terms of our team, in terms of our roster. Our roster has a lot of great depth. It just doesn't have any difference makers at any of the positions that we need to have difference makers at. Starting with cornerback, quarterback, and pass rusher. But like that's one thing I think Ballard has done really very, very, very well. He's found offensive linemen in like the fifth, sixth round that were like starters. And that's a huge talent because most teams can't, and most GMs can't really see offensive linemen like that. So he has an eye for offensive linemen, and I think that should be noted. You know what I mean? So
You sound like a fan. You're really going to sit here and tell me that like this draft is successful because it provides depth.
I'm serious. Like we have players that are like they're not bad at any of these positions. They're adding depth in. Yeah, they're just not
Is it
difference
is it
makers.
isn't Alec Pierce going to be something like the fourth receiver on this team?
Yes, he is going to be the fourth receiver, but he was the same thing last year, and he still was the thing that made Anthony Richardson look halfway decent.
Yeah, if they picked him at like 103, that might be a valuable
So,
pick. But
so
at
what I'm saying
53,
is
that's not value.
Anthony Richardson threw for 47%. Like 15 of that percent was like Alec Pierce. Okay, so
That's
yes,
that's
I'm saying
fine.
that's
If
our production coming from our number four wide receiver.
Yeah, okay. Number four receiver and Jelani Woods, who may be the second tight end, maybe the third tight end. It's not like y'all run a lot of double tight end plays. But Raymond being the starting tackle, all right, he's a starting level tackle in the NFL. Like that's good, and getting that in the third round, that's good. Like I said, Nick Cross, it's good, but yeah,
Okay. So I'm gonna do
Carson Wentz.
something. I'm gonna do something a little interesting because I feel as though Jacksonville, Kansas City, and the Chargers we're going to talk a little bit more about, and only got a couple minutes, so I want to get through one more team. So we're gonna jump to the Las Vegas Raiders
Okay.
because I think there's a lot less to talk about there. So they did not have a first or second round pick. In the third round, they got Dylan Parham, offensive guard. In the fourth round, they got Zamir White, running back. And also in the fourth round, they got Neil Farrell Jr., defensive tackle. And yeah, so I'm also just gonna go on record, just like that Cleveland Browns one. We could just crumple this up, throw this away. We're gonna start over next year. All right, sorry, we just gotta get better at a lot of things. Um, yeah, so that's why I got
Yeah,
this is bad.
yeah.
This is
This
bad.
this is this is a bad one. So the reason they don't have picks, first and second round picks, is because they traded for Devontae Adams in this
Okay.
offseason. Um, yeah, I mean Zamir White was the starting running back. But I that might just be in just somebody got to
Don't
get
have
buckets
somebody
on
better. That
on
they
bad
just don't
teams.
have
Yeah,
somebody better right now.
yeah. I don't think Dylan Parham is really panned out. This is a 4 draft. We can move on if you'd like. There's nothing much to say about this.
Okay.
The Raiders have been bad for a while, and drafts like this are why.
Okay. We can fit one more in. Let's go. All right,
Okay.
so we're gonna jump back. We're gonna jump forward a little bit more because I feel as though Miami will have something to talk about. So we're gonna go to New England. So New England in their first round they got offensive guard Cole Strange. In the second round they got Tyquan Thornton, wide receiver. In their third round they got Marcus Jones, cornerback. In their fourth round pick they got Jack Jones, and they got Bailey Zappi, their backup quarterback in the
He's
fourth.
not there anymore, though.
Oh, he's not there anymore. You're absolutely right. All right, cool. So, what do you think about this draft then?
I mean, might be a worse draft than the Raiders draft. They were more like Cole Strange was that might have been the last straw that that the Patriots owner had with Belichick in terms of picking players, because Cole Strange was like nobody had him having a draft rate higher than a third round pick, and they drafted him in the first round. Tyquan Thornton, he hasn't panned out. He had moments, but I don't think he's on the team anymore. If he is, he's like depth, as you said. I'm not sure Marcus Jones is what he does now. I remember he was like a real small cornerback coming out of Houston, but Jack Jones is not on the team anymore. Bailey Zappi's not on the team anymore. I don't know Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris. Like, this is a bad draft. This is a 4.
Yes. So this that was basically my whole note. This was the draft that the Patriots looked and said, you know what? These last 20 years were amazing.
We
This is
cherish
not gonna work out. This is not, I don't know what's going on with you, but this is not going, you ain't for this time, you know? So he used to be able to make picks like this and be like, who is that guy? Bill Belichick used to be able to make picks like this and be like, who is that guy? And that guy ruined offenses and be a complete difference maker. And he just didn't have that anymore. So yeah, they've been starting over from this. It's just a weird draft. Yeah, this is an awful draft. This might be the worst draft of the Patriots history, and it's interesting that it came.
This might be the worst draft in this draft. This might be the worst one. I mean, there's some bad ones.
They did get. I mean, Bailey Zappi is a name that we can remember. I'm thinking the Raiders one. I'm like, I already forgot all the names on their draft.
That's true, but like that's because those players like never did anything, I guess. And I saw Bailey Zappi like had some starts. Cool, that he's no longer on the team. Anyway, yeah, there's not much more to say about that.
Okay. So in 2022, their number one pick, which was the number one overall pick, was Trayvon Walker, defensive end. Then they also had a second first round pick, and that is Devin Lloyd, inside linebacker. Then in the third round, they drafted Luke Fortner, and they got Chad Muma in the third round as well. What do you think about this draft?
I gave it a 3. I think Trayvon Walker has actually come through in the last couple of seasons. He's a double-digit sack player now. So he's not what you would traditionally think of as a number one overall pick in terms of the production that he has had, but I think he's been good. Devin Lloyd, they declined his 5th-year option. I'm not sure he's going to have much longer on the team after this season. The rest of the players that they drafted, I'm not sure of that they've done anything of note in their NFL career. So I give it a 3. That's at the very least wild. Trayvon Walker, he isn't the dominant force that you would expect from a number one overall pick. This was a weird draft anyway. So getting value and getting talent out of that player, I think has been good for them. So I give it a 3.
Actually, I thought this draft was rather trash from them. Yeah, so they don't have any of the. So Trayvon Walker is a starter. I'm going deeper on that, but they don't have anybody else who's a starter in this draft. And think Devin Lloyd is a backup. I could be wrong about that.
I think he starts, but he hasn't. Like, that's kind of he starts and he's like the 11th best player on defense.
Okay, he's the weak side linebacker. Yes, okay, but he starts. Okay, so Trayvon Walker pick, and I'm comparing this. It might have been a weird draft. You know, it wasn't weird. They could have had my man from Detroit, and they passed on him.
Aiden Hutchinson. Yep.
Aiden Hutchinson. Thank you so much. They could have had Aiden Hutchinson, and they drafted him instead. So, in comparison to what that is, I gotta add that to this equation. This will be the first time I'm ever using a Madden rating for anything, but he's rated about a 78 on Madden. And Aiden Hutchinson probably, had he not broken his leg, been the defensive player of the year last year. So they did not get a difference. And I think if you're going to get a top 5 pick, that person has to be a difference maker.
The only thing I say about that is there are. This was a bad draft in that way. Like, there weren't a lot of difference makers in the first round in that draft. Was Trayvon Walker like the worst of the top 5 picks as far as NFL production? I mean, it's him, Aiden Hutchinson, Stingley, Sauce Gardner, and who else was in that draft? You know, offhand.
I'll tell you in 1 second. All right, so it's Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Derek Stingley, Sauce Gardner, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, like I mean, he's better than Kayvon Thibodeau.
Is
That's
he?
not a high bar. Yeah, he's better than Kayvon Thibodeau.
Okay.
Thibodeau isn't doing. He's not. He might not start this year. It's gonna be him or Carter. I don't think Kayvon Thibodeau has double-digit sacks. But I mean, it's like look at like number 6 is Ike Iquanu, and then there's Evan Neal and Drake London is in there.
You're right. You're right.
It's like
You're right. It's a weird draft. It's a weird draft.
it's a weird draft. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like this is a draft where look, those players are good. Sauce Gardner had a down year last year, but he's good. Like I don't take anything from them. I just think betting on the traits that Trayvon Walker walked into the draft with, I understood it, even though I didn't. I probably would have taken Aiden Hutchinson first overall myself, simply because I just thought he was a better player coming out. But they turned Trayvon Walker into a double-digit sack player. So
Okay. So we'll see about that. But like I said, you can always look at, well, this is very unfortunate for them, but you can look at what's after who you pick, and that's where you say was this good or bad. And having the number 1 pick and having that player not be the difference maker out of anybody in the top 5, I mean, you still chose them. You know what I mean? So no, I think they were clearly. I mean, there's clearly other picks that they could have chose that would have voted much better results, and put them in a better situation. I think they missed on this pick, and I think we're getting to the point where we're starting to see they probably missed on the Trevor Lawrence pick as well. Um, Now he did get paid, so it's hard to make that point, especially after somebody gets paid. But
yeah, I mean, at this point,
I think
Trevor
that has
Lawrence.
more to do with the situation that they're in and why they're underachieving. You know, based on their roster and how much talent is actually on their roster, as opposed to other teams. They have as much players that are supposed to be the difference makers, that are thought to be the difference makers. They have just as, if not more, than the Houston Texans. But the reality of these players that they chose, it's not of that caliber.
Yeah, like at this point, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is somebody who there's a like when I try to think about like who's the worst quarterback who you can still build a Super Bowl team around. I think Trevor Lawrence is worse than that player.
I'll repeat that again.
If I think about like who's the worst quarterback that you can still build a Super Bowl contending team
Okay,
around,
okay. So you cannot build a Super Bowl contender.
he's out. I think he's outside of that right now. He has to show, like I think Brock Purdy is better than him. I think there's a number of quarterbacks that are better than him than what he's demonstrated. So I know he's not in this draft. He's not who we're really talking
I
about.
know what you were saying. I know what you were saying. Um, Actually, Brock Purdy was in this draft. He was drafted in this draft.
No, I mean
In the different drafts. In this draft, he was though. But
yeah, Trevor Lawrence was not in this draft. That's
got
not
you,
that's not
got
who we're
you,
talking
got
about.
you, got you, got you.
Kansas City, right?
We're going to Kansas City. Kansas City had 2 first-round picks. They picked Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. Then they got Sky Moore, the wide receiver, Brian Cook as their safety. Is anybody else that they really got? Oh, and they also got in the 7th round Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, and they also got Jalen Watson, I think, is a starting corner for them, and Brian Cook. You said Brian Cook, he's their starting safety, and Leo Chanel is a starting linebacker for them.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, what do you think about this draft?
I gave this a 4. I went back and forth between 3 and 4. I think getting Trent McDuffie is a starter and a really
He's
good
a
player.
difference maker.
Yeah, and George Karlaftis is a good is a solid. He's not a difference maker as you describe him, but to get a productive player at pick 30, I think it's good. Sky Moore has been pretty much a bust up until this point. Brian Cook, like I said, starts. Leo Chanel starts. Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco. Like they got good players later in the draft. Really got good value out of those later picks. So I gave it a 4. This is the kind of draft that allows them to do things like move on from Ty Hill, trade him to Miami, and not have to pay high premiums on veteran talent when you can draft like this.
I got you. Quick question: Who's a better defensive end, or who's a better defensive end playmaker? However you want to look at it, George Karlaftis or Trayvon Walker?
Trayvon Walker.
You feel like that? Okay, so I feel like my man George has produced a lot more, which was going into what I thought. I think the Chiefs have done a lot of that in the draft, where you're picking somebody who is like, oh, this player is clearly the better player, and they're selecting the player that was actually better, and they're stealing a lot of drafts, and that's why they're it's been really fun watching them draft people because they're getting people. You're like, where's this going? Like getting Isaiah Pacheco in the seventh round. Like, wow, you got like he solidified their running game. You know what I'm saying? I'll give him that. Sky Moore, yes. I mean, he's good. He's their fourth or fifth wide receiver. You know what I mean? He may not have worked out, but getting Trent McDuffie, who is a difference maker, they moved off of their their cornerback. Who did they draft? The Titans picked them up.
Sneed.
Snead.
Sneed.
They moved off of Snead for because they knew that they had Trent McDuffie and Karlaftis. Like I'm not mad. I'm not mad at what they do. They usually get two or three players in a draft that are going to be definitely solid starters. Solid to like really good. You know what I mean? Not necessarily they may not always be difference makers, but they make a difference on or an impact on some level on their roster. So I always love watching the Kansas City Chiefs draft. So I'm not mad at this draft. I probably look at this draft a little better and more favorable than you do. Like
I
I
mean, what did I think I gave it a 1.
you gave it a 3.
No, if I said that, I'm sorry. I gave it a 1. This is a top-notch draft. My bad. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's not what
My
you
bad.
definitely said 3.
Sorry. 1. This is a 1. I went back between 1 and 2 on this. But I gave it a 1.
Okay. Then we're
My
pretty
bad. My bad.
around that. It's all good. So like I said, the best drafting teams in the NFL that I've seen have been the Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Rams. Those have been the best drafting teams that I've seen, and yeah, I think you can kind of all see all three of them in the situation that they're in at this point.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the Chargers. Chargers in this draft, they drafted in the first round. They got Zion Johnson, offensive guard. They did not have a second round pick. So in the third round, they got JT Wood, safety. In the fourth round, they got Isaiah Spiller, running back. Yeah, nobody else really that I'm looking at like that. But what do you think about this draft?
I gave it a 3. Could have been a 4. But so like Zion Johnson, he's been okay. He started off, he was drafted as a tackle. They moved him in a guard. He's been fine. I don't think there's anyone else in here that's of note or on the roster.
Mhm.
This is the kind of draft where like, so I am lower on Justin Herbert than most people are, but this is the kind of
I am
draft that
too. I thought it was just me. I didn't think you was gonna
no, no,
say
no.
that. I am too. I made a whole video about that.
So, but this is the kind of draft that people who defend Herbert point to and say like there's not enough around him because it's like what really does a draft like this do to help a quarterback succeed? There's not much there. So it's not the worst draft here that we've seen, but it's not a good one.
Mm-hmm. So you also got to keep in mind when you talk about Justin Herbert that there's also an overlap of the talent that was there before that got old since his tenure.
Sure.
So we're looking at this through the scope of this was this year's draft, and I get that, but the Chargers have had a very talented roster for a long time. And he doesn't have one playoff win to show for it. I think he's only been to the playoff twice, and I think in both scenarios, I looked at the roster he had as in comparison to the roster that beat them, and I said, "Oh, he's got the superior roster," and he lost
Um,
both of them. So,
I didn't
this
you didn't
year,
think
he
that he was
definitely
better
had a better roster than who he
than
lost.
Houston?
Absolutely.
No, I disagree with that.
No, did they
Houston was a
lose to
better team.
Houston? Yeah, they did lose to Houston. And Houston had like in retrospect of last year coming into this year, this was a down year for them. Like there was like CJ Stroud is having a worse year. Everybody else is having a worse year. Like the
Yeah,
Chargers had a better roster
that's not
than
the same thing. They had the down year, but that's not the same thing as they had a worse roster. I think that game ended up the way it was supposed to end up. The Chargers were in the first year with a new head coach. They were changing their style. I'm not saying, look, I'm not defending Justin Herbert here. I'm just saying they, that team, like they were the road team. Like they weren't, they were not all that, they were not really good last year. But that last year, like to your point, last year was really the first year that where I looked at the roster and thought this is a less talented team around Herbert than what has been there before.
I'm sorry. I'm not feeling like that at all about them. I'm thinking this roster. I'm like, what do you? They've got wide receivers. They had two pass rushers. They had two pass rushers. You know what I mean? With him, they've had an offensive line. They've had cornerback. Like I just don't know
Yeah,
what
I mean,
you
like the cornerback play was not good last year for the Chargers. Like they
last year, but when they lost the first one because they only went to the playoffs twice. When they lost to Jacksonville,
the
it was
Jacksonville
strong.
one was
That's
that's a
what I'm
different
saying.
story.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
The
alluding to.
Jacksonville loss was a different story
So
than the
that's what I'm
Houston
alluding to.
loss.
They had talent that he was supposed to be like. They kept saying rah rah him, and he couldn't do nothing with all the talent. They did drafts, and they had to lose some players to make sure that he got paid. And now he can't carry what he has. So that's why I'm looking at him more specifically. But I still stand on what I'm saying. Him and the rest of that roster, they losing to teams that they're more talented than. On
Happened
paper.
once, not twice.
All right, cool. So the Miami Dolphins. This is gonna be quick. Miami Dolphins only had 4 picks in 2022. They did not have a first or second round pick, or a fifth or sixth round pick. So I guess I'll just say their picks. In the third round, they got Channing Tyndall, inside linebacker. In the fourth round, they got Eric Zukama, wide receiver. In the seventh round, they got Cameron Good, outside linebacker, and in the seventh round, they got Skylar Thompson, QB. Real quick, and I'll give you way more time with this. We just gonna crumble this one up as well. We just gonna throw that one in the trash, and we just gonna move on from that. We just didn't do our thing. We messed up. We made some mistakes. We just gotta learn from it in the future. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, this you look back and you see why a team like Miami struggles when it gets like late in the season and playoffs, and why they have big names, but that doesn't always carry the day. It has not carried the day at all going into the playoffs. It's drafts like this. I give this a 4. Of note, the trades, the reason they don't have
Tyreek
a lot of
Hill,
picks
right?
in this one is Tyreek Hill, and they traded up for Jalen Waddle in the draft
And
the
it
previous
was
year.
Chubb too, right?
That's part of. Honestly, I don't know if that was if
They didn't draft him, the defensive end. They didn't draft him.
right, but I'm not sure if the picks that they traded to get him were from this draft or previous drafts. I'm not sure
Okay.
about that. It could be though. I'm not sure. But regardless, yeah, none of. I don't believe any of these players turned into any player of note. I recognize that they're later in the draft picks, but you know, like the only name I really recognize is Skylar Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Did he start? He may have actually started a playoff game for Miami. Actually,
I have no idea. But let me just say this. Out of all the teams, I may even when they were looking scary, even when they was remember when they was putting 50 on people and 70 on people,
mm,
you know what I mean? Even then, I have always hated their roster construction. And I knew this is gonna bite y'all in the ass. And I knew this is not gonna work out, even when it was putting up 70. So this is why I say what I say about sometimes about wide receivers, and why you don't make them the biggest investment into your team. So they have two great wide receivers. They have a fast running back, and they have Tua, who, depending on how you see him, some people like him, some people are a little downer on him. I'm a little downer on him, but I do understand that he puts up numbers. Um, no offensive line, no pass rush, no real help on defense, but you did have Jalen what's that
Waddle.
cornerback name? Huh?
Oh, the dude from the
Ramsey,
Rams.
Jalen Ramsey.
Ramsey. Yeah.
They did have Jalen Ramsey, but it's like the meat and potatoes of their team is always like you can run it right down their throat and you can control the clock. You don't really have to stack the box to stop the run, so you can keep too deep. And they play a team like Buffalo or a team like Baltimore and they get exposed every single time. Or they play Kansas City, they get exposed every single time. So The reason why they don't have a draft is because they said we want wide receivers, we want big plays, we want down the field, we want all that, and never thought to themselves maybe we need to have offensive line to protect that. So yes, I can look at this and be like, this is a whole conversation. This is about 5 different conversations of how you got 4 picks in this draft. But I've always hated that roster construction. I'm like, and now everybody's like, oh, it's clear now, and I'm like, it was clear when y'all thought they were great.
Yeah, I agree. There's not much. Yeah, there's just not much to say about this draft. Like, there's not a lot of players that I recognize, and like I said, you look at outcomes for teams, and there's a direct correlation to how they draft, and this is an example of that.
Mm. And it was Bradley Chubb. That's his name. That's who
Yeah.
might have. But they picked to wide receivers. That was stupid. Sometimes, and I'll be real with you, and I know you're gonna say, no, that's not true. I look at like the Miami Dolphins GM, and I'm like, bro, me and you, we could do a better job than that. Yeah, I'm telling you, we could do a better job than that. That is we could do a better job.
Hey man, hey, listen,
We could do a better job.
That man has done a wonderful job
No, he has
keeping his job safe.
That's a very nice way of saying he sucks. And you said that too. You just said he's terrible. That was for everybody.
What he needs to do in front of the team owner to keep his job.
You just said he was terrible and awful. And he was like,
there is a skill in that. There's a life lesson in that too.
Whatever. So, you just said he was terrible. You admitted he was terrible.
This draft was really bad.
You admitted he was terrible too. All right, cool. So we're gonna move on to the New York Jets. So with their picks in the first round, they got Sauce Gardner. Also in their first round pick, they got Garrett Wilson, and they had 3 first-round picks. How the heck did they pull that off?
Yep.
They got Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end from Florida State. Then in the second round, they drafted Breece Hall, and yeah. So what do you think about this draft? This is an interesting looking draft, actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the Jets are an example of like you have to have a quarterback or else nothing else works in terms of being good and having a good record, because Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson they are elite or next to elite level players. They are difference makers, as you described. Jermaine Johnson, he's been hurt. He's been coming on slow. I'm not sure he's long for the team. But that's also part of like they had this weird drafting strategy where they drafted a bunch of defensive ends who were kind of the same type of player. Just kind of throwing ideas against the wall and hoping something sticks. He was one of those. I'm not convinced he's there for long. We saw, for like the season and change that they gave him the ball, and he was the number one. He was their true number one running back. He was really good, but it seems like they don't really like him, and I'm not completely sure why. It seems like last season in particular, he was basically splitting carries with a rookie, and that rookie may be taking the lion's share of the carries this year. So we'll see about that. I give this draft a 2. It's a good draft, not a great draft, but a very good draft.
So right now, Jermaine Johnson is slotted as their starter.
Okay.
So they got.
Did they give him his 5th-year option? So this is
I have no idea. I have no idea. But so you get 2. I'm not gonna say difference makers, but close to difference makers, but definitely more than solid starters. And then you got a third starter in this draft. See, you said it best. You gotta get quarterback right. If you don't get quarterback right, none of else is gonna matter. They knocked this draft out of the park. Like, what else do you want from a draft? Like, they won this draft. You know what I mean? Like, they won. Well, and Breece Hall. I'm sorry, and Breece Hall. And Breece Hall. So they got 4 starters, and 2 of them are more of the difference making, closer to the difference making.
What I'm not sure about, and maybe that I shouldn't be adding this into what we're doing, but they have 3 first round draft picks for a reason. And I just don't know what that reason is. Like, what did they trade away to get those picks? Because that's an odd thing to have 3 draft picks. So I just don't know what went into that. Anyway, I agree. Like, you got 4 starters in the first 2 rounds. You should be happy with that. It's just like Garrett Wilson, He's a really good receiver. Is he the 12th best receiver in the NFL? Is he the 9th best receiver in the NFL? Like, is it? I'm not sure. Sauce Gardner is like one of the 3 or 4 best corners in the league, maybe even number 2. Um, that's why I gave it a 2. I'm like Garrett Wilson, really good, not great. Jermaine Johnson, they did exercise his 5th-year option. He's starting for them. Breece Hall had been starting, but looks like he might be getting phased out. So I kept it at 2. I kept it at 2.
I just don't know. Like if when you're drafted, when you say, all right, we're playing for our draft, to walk away with 4 starters and 2 of
Yeah, but
them because of
that's
the like, there's you
that's
can't really do
this is
better
a
than that.
situation because 3 of those
Like
players are
the
first
Jets are
round
really
picks.
talented. Like the like I don't I like the Jets are a talented roster. They just didn't have a quarterback. Now I am curious about going into this year and what their strategy is to cover up their, like, are they going to look at um Justin Fields and say we're going to run more, we're going to use him running more, and we'll just say, hey, we'll live with it. They could be very scary doing that. Um, if they, yeah, I mean, but they can't just drop back with him. But listen, the Jets are good, and I'm not, and the Jets have a talented roster, okay. And I don't know why they're in these situations that they're in. They must have a curse on them or something. But this is not a bad roster. This draft, you can't walk away with a better draft than this.
Yeah, like I said, it's a really good draft. I just it's not a 4. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not a 1.
Okay, okay, okay. So next, we are going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. In their draft, they got Kenny Pickett in their first pick. Um, they got George Pickens in the second round, wide receiver, who they of course they just dealt. In the third round, they got DeMarvin Leal. In the fourth round, they did get Calvin Austin. Um, yeah. So, what do you think? What are you thinking about this?
So it's hard because George Pickens was a productive, while kind of being a dunce cap, he was a productive receiver for them. I mean, he's no longer on the team because of the trade. It's hard to see this being anything higher than like, I feel like I'm going to give it a 3. Like Calvin Austin is still on the team. He plays
Mm-hmm.
a good amount when he's healthy. But Kenny Pickett's not there anymore. George Pickett's not there anymore. I don't know much about what DeMarvin Leal has done in the NFL. Like, it's not a. Well, I guess they have 7 picks. I want to give it a 3, and I don't know why. Like, I feel like this might be a 4, and I'm just kind of giving like a Mike Tomlin
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
bump on it.
I get what you say. I get what you say. Um, it's always, when I look at the Steelers, it's always hard to see them in a negative light. But when I look at this draft, I think it becomes a little bit clearer what I think about them going into this year. Um, so George Pickens not being there has a lot to do with it. Um, they do have Calvin Austin still going there, but even the draft strategy of Kenny Pickett at pick 20. This is my thought, and like I said, this is more of a draft thought process for me. Quarterback is not a position you can draft a guy. You got to draft the guy. If this is a guy, you kind of gotta let him slide. If you don't know if he's gonna be great, you gotta let him slide. To invest a first round pick that's not a top 5 pick into a quarterback, I think um I think it's incorrect. I never felt like Kenny Pickett was going to work out. I thought that if you're gonna draft a quarterback, if you ask the question, if I asked you right now, would you draft coming into this, would you draft Kenny Pickett with a top 5 pick? I feel like your answer would be like no. And that's why you don't draft a quarterback in the first round, that quarterback in the first round at all. You know what I mean? So that's more or less my thought process on it. I would much rather pick him in the second or the third round, more closer to the third round. To be real with you, if I'm not going, and that's what I think. That kind of clears up what I feel about quarterbacks. If he's not the guy, he got to slide way back into the draft for me. I'm not taking risks, first round risks on quarterback.
I mean, this was a terrible quarterback draft. They also needed a quarterback. They
Yes.
didn't. And so then the question was like, well, who, if not him, then who are you even going to play at quarterback that season? I didn't have any faith in Kenny Pickett being a quality NFL quarterback either. But this is the there's a it's not like the old days with like Matt Stafford where like you had to pay the first round pick quarterback a bunch of money guaranteed. You can draft quarterbacks every year, and that'd be okay. So I wasn't I kind of understood why they did it. Kenny Pickett just wasn't the guy, and I understand that. But to me, it's really like the rest of the draft. Like there's no one else is on the roster. Like it's
But that's what I'm saying. So like this wasn't like he was the best quarterback in this draft. And that doesn't mean draft that quarterback. That means don't draft it just because
I
this is
mean,
just the best quarterback in this draft. So we got draft. No, you don't draft him. Like you don't draft him there.
I,
Fill out the
you're
rest of your
you're
roster.
you're making it sound like I don't know what their draft board looked like. For me, he would have been lower. He might have been right there for them as far as value, for the player who he is, the position, and all that. He might have been right there for them at that spot. Like they might have had him as the number 20 best player in the draft. I don't know. And who knows on that. But like that approach, you're just missing on a lot of players who could actually be something. Like you would have missed on Jalen Hurts with that
He
approach.
wasn't drafted in the first round.
Yeah, but you said you wouldn't draft him to the third round.
I'm saying my incorrectness on Jalen Hurts. Yeah, sure, I might have been wrong there, but I'm more comfortable letting him slide to the third round than drafting him in the first round.
Yeah, and look, neither Jalen Hurts coming out nor Kenny Pickett are someone who you should reach for. I'll
I mean,
definitely.
in terms of second round quarterbacks that were successful, I'm thinking Jalen Hurts. I got Derek Carr comes to mind. Andy Dalton comes to mind. Those were yeah. I mean, there's a couple of them there, but if we said late first round picks, we got Lamar Jackson, and then I don't even know who else we worked out as a late first round pick as a quarterback.
No, I agree. But that has a lot to do with the fact that the quarterback position gets overvalued in the draft anyway.
Yes.
So like it's not like what's his name, who's the quarterback, Bo Nix. Um, if you think like I think about what he was coming into the NFL, he should have been more of a second round pick. But the whole if you have any kind of chance to be a good quarterback in the NFL, your value is going to be pushed up. Um, the draft order. So I think that has a lot to do with the reason why most good quarterbacks are picked in like the first half of the first round, the first 10 picks or whatever. It's just that has to do with the fact that the value of the position demands that teams overvalue quarterback.
Okay. All right, cool. So we're going to round this off with our final team, the Tennessee Titans. In their first round pick, they had Traylon Burks. Their second round pick, they had Roger McCreary. Third round, they had Nicholas Pettit. Don't even know who that is. I don't think that's important. They drafted Malik Willis in the third round. Um, Yeah, so I'm gonna be very quick. Once again, we can crumple this one up. We kind of throw that in the trash. We can start over. We made some mistakes. We're gonna have to figure this out in the future. But right now, we just didn't. We weren't prepared for this. And let's be better in the future. You can go.
Yeah, I mean Roger McCreary gets some burn. He plays a good amount in the nickel. Um, that's really it. Traylon Burks wasn't really again another big athletic
He was supposed to
person
be AJ Brown because they
who's
traded him
not
to the Eagles.
who's
He was
not a
supposed to be the
actual
replacement. He's supposed to do it.
football player. Yeah, he's not that.
Add some
Yeah,
context to it.
yeah, no, that's right. Like he was supposed to replace AJ Brown. The problem is AJ Brown was an actual receiver in college, and this guy was just an athlete. He was like fast and big, and
Mhm.
an elite athlete in college. Let's be clear. They basically built Arkansas built their whole offense around him being able to play running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback.
Mhm.
So like great, but he couldn't do any of those things in the NFL.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is a 4 for me.
Yeah, I picked up on that. Don't worry. I knew that before you said anything. So I'm not sure if this was a draft that got where they kind of looked at who was their head coach, now the head coach of Vrabel, and said, you may not be doing this the right way, but this has the feelings of the same Belichick, Vrabel. We might be coming to the same conclusion at the same time, kind of feel.
Could be the case if he's the one who's picking Traylon Burks in the first round.
Well,
Malik Willis actually had some moments in Green Bay.
He did. He actually last year he came in. He beat my Colts. Actually, he won.
Yeah.
So that's that. So this wraps up. So this whole segment. This wraps up this whole segment. Man, we finished with it. And I thought I created this segment thinking of you in mind. I said, this is a mooch segment right here. So how you feel? So this is more a line of what I feel, because I told you I don't like mock drafts. I don't like that because I'm like, there's nothing we can prove. This is something we can prove and we can look at and we can evaluate seriously. So what do you feel about this? Because this is, I think we got a new standard in this podcast.
Yeah, it's definitely something we should do next year. It all came together well.
Okay.
This is your brainchild. Congratulations.
Well, you know what? You just bring that on me. I wasn't prepared for that. Yeah, just drop it.
Yeah, you about to cry.
Yeah, that's okay. But with that said,
hold on. Are you about to end?
I was, but go ahead.
Okay. So we have to say, tomorrow is our mother's birthday.
You're
happy
right.
Birthday, mommy.
Happy birthday, mommy. That's right. See, I try to keep private stuff private, but you know what? I probably should have said that. You know what I mean? And with that said, we're going to call this episode the Pam now. Now, you done changed everything. Now, this is the Pam, because that's my girl.
Mom, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mom.
Because that's my girl right there. See? And with that said, you can find our full episodes on Spotify and YouTube, and then you can get our reels on. Did you see the new reel that we put out from the first one? We're gonna have this one up there. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We all over the place. Mooch, you did your thing again, man. I gotta admit, this was you did what you were supposed to do there.
I appreciate you.
It really saddens me that I still gotta tell you, unfortunately, cause you don't know football. I appreciate you as always. And like Martin said, I'm going to see you when I see you. Peace.